I hosted a family reunion to reconnect everyone, but instead, my aunt pulled me aside and whispered that my wife and my mother had been covering up my brother's affair with her for years. I was balls deep in my trainer when my phone lit up with 17 missed calls from my wife. That's not how I wanted to start this story, but if I'm being honest about how everything fell apart, I need to start with the truth. I was a cheating piece of work who thought I was too smart to get caught. The trainer, Melissa, was everything my wife, Sarah, wasn't anymore. 23, no stretch marks, didn't smell like baby formula and exhaustion. God, typing that makes me want to punch myself in the face. But 3 months ago, when Sarah was dealing with postpartum depression after our second kid, all I could think about was how Melissa looked at me like I was still somebody worth wanting. The affair started 6 weeks before the family reunion I'd planned. I'd been going to the gym religiously, telling Sarah it was for my health, for our future. I was addicted to the way Melissa would touch my arm when correcting my form, how she'd bite her lip when I lifted heavy. I justified it 1,000 ways. Sarah hadn't touched me in months. She was always tired. Always with the baby. Always somewhere else, even when she was right next to me. I deserved to feel wanted, didn't I? That's what I told myself when Melissa suggested private sessions at her apartment. The reunion was supposed to be my redemption arc. See, I'd been feeling guilty about the affair, and I thought if I could just be the perfect husband for one weekend, host this massive family gathering, bring everyone together, maybe the guilt would stop eating me alive. Maybe I could end things with Melissa and recommit to my family. I spent thousands on catering, rented a huge lake house, and invited family members who hadn't spoken in years. Sarah was so happy, she kept saying this was the man she married. She had no idea that man was someone else twice a week in a studio apartment that smelled like protein powder and bad decisions. My brother Tom arrived first with his wife, Jennifer. They seemed off, but I was too wrapped up in my drama to notice. My mother came next, fussing over decorations and insisting on rearranging everything. She kept pulling Sarah aside for whispered conversations that I assumed were about the party planning. Christ, I was so blind. So focused on hiding my secret that I couldn't see the other secrets multiplying around me like cancer cells. The morning of the main event, I was in the garage getting more chairs when Melissa texted me. She was pregnant. My hands shook so hard I dropped my phone in a cooler full of ice. Pregnant. The word kept bouncing around my skull while my family laughed and caught up 50 feet away. I could hear Sarah's laugh, the real one, not the tired courtesy laugh she'd been giving me lately. She was happy. Our kids were playing with their cousins. And I'd just blown it all too. I must have stood in that garage for 20 minutes, just staring at those 2 words, I'm pregnant. Part of me wanted to run. Just get in my car and disappear. But then my Aunt Linda found me. She was my father's sister, a woman who'd survived 3 divorces and had the kind of radar that comes from experience. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. Bobby, she said, using my childhood nickname that no one had called me in years. We need to talk. I thought she'd figured out about Melissa. I was ready to deny everything, had the lies lined up like soldiers. But what she said next made my affair seem like a paper cut compared to a gunshot wound. Your wife and your mother have been covering something up. About Tom. And Jennifer. She paused, watching my face. Tom's been having an affair with Jennifer's sister. For 2 years. Sarah found out 6 months ago when she saw them together at that coffee shop on 5th. Your mother's known even longer. The garage spun. Tom and Jennifer's sister Rachel? The same Rachel who was at our wedding, who babysat our kids, who was supposed to arrive any minute for the reunion. I wanted to throw up. But Linda wasn't done. Sarah didn't tell you because she was protecting Jennifer. And because. Linda's voice got softer. Because she suspected you were cheating, too. She told your mother she could smell perfume on your gym clothes. They've been waiting for you to come clean on your own. I did throw up then, right into a box of decorative napkins. My wife knew. My mother knew. They'd been watching me lie for weeks, maybe months, letting me dig my own grave while they dealt with Tom's betrayal. The reunion I'd planned to ease my guilt was a powder keg, and I just lit the fuse. Why are you telling me this? I managed to ask Linda. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. Because in about 10 minutes, Jennifer is going to find out about Rachel. Tom doesn't know that Sarah accidentally sent Jennifer a text meant for your mother about the whole situation. Jennifer's been sitting on it, waiting for the right moment. She wanted to do it publicly, at this reunion you so thoughtfully planned. She wanted witnesses. I ran back to the house just as Jennifer stood up at the main table, tapping a spoon against her wine glass. Everyone turned to listen, probably expecting a sweet toast. Sarah caught my eye from across the room, and in that moment, I saw she knew everything. About Melissa, about the pregnancy text I'd just received, about the fact that our whole family was about to implode in front of 40 relatives. Jennifer smiled, but it was the smile of someone about to drop a nuclear bomb. I wanted to thank Bobby for bringing us all together, she began, her voice sweet as arsenic. Family reunions are so important for truth-telling, don't you think? Tom went white. My mother grabbed Sarah's hand. And I stood there, phone burning in my pocket with Melissa's pregnancy text, watching my brother's marriage explode while knowing mine was next. Jennifer pulled out her phone, connected it to the Bluetooth speaker I'd set up for music, and played a voicemail. Rachel's voice filled the space, breathy and intimate. "Tommy, I can't wait until we can stop hiding. I love you. Just a few more months and we can be together for real." The reunion turned into a. Tom tried to grab the phone. Jennifer poured red wine in his face. Rachel, who'd just arrived, tried to run, but Jennifer's mother blocked her exit. And in the chaos, my phone fell out of my pocket, screen up, Melissa's contact photo visible to everyone, her text notification clear as day: "We need to talk about the baby." Sarah saw it first. The look on her face wasn't surprise or shock. It was resignation. Like she'd been waiting for this moment, had rehearsed it in her head 100 times. She didn't scream or cry. She just picked up our youngest from his high chair, took our daughter's hand, and walked to the car. No words. No scene. Just gone. My mother followed her, but not before looking at me with such disappointment that I wanted to dissolve into the floorboards. "Two sons," she said quietly. "I raised two sons who became this." The reunion lasted in minutes. Family members who'd driven hours to attend couldn't leave fast enough. Jennifer was sobbing while her sister was pinned in the bushes, Tom on his knees, begging for forgiveness that would never come. And me? I stood in the middle of the lake house I'd rented, surrounded by enough food for 40 people, holding my phone with 17 missed calls from my wife, who'd known all along. Linda was the last to leave. She stopped at the door, looked back at me and Tom standing in the wreckage of our lives, and said, "Your father would be ashamed." Then she was gone too. I tried calling Sarah. Straight to voicemail. Texted apologies that showed Osriad but got no response. I drove home to find the locks already changed. My clothes were in garbage bags on the lawn, the expensive golf clubs I'd bought myself for my birthday broken in half next to them. The neighbors were watching from their windows. Everyone would know by morning. That night, I stayed in a motel that smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams. Melissa called 6 times. I didn't answer. Tom texted that Jennifer was filing for divorce and taking the kids back to her mother's in Colorado. I didn't respond. I just lay on that scratchy motel blanket, staring at the last family photo on my phone. Sarah laughing, kids smiling, me looking like I had everything. The timestamp said 3 months ago. Right before I started the trainer. 3 weeks after the reunion disaster, I was living in my car and washing myself in YM bathrooms. Not the gym where Melissa worked. That membership had been revoked after Sarah sent them screenshots of our texts, claiming inappropriate conduct between trainer and client. Melissa lost her job. She blamed me for ruining her career. The baby she was carrying? She wasn't sure if it was mine or her ex-boyfriend's, but she wanted me to pay for the paternity test. Every penny I had was going to the lawyer Sarah hired, the one who specialized in high-conflict divorces with infidelity components. The morning everything truly went to, I was parked outside my kids' daycare, hoping to catch a glimpse of them. The restraining order said 500 feet, but I figured sitting in my car at 499 feet was technically legal. That's how pathetic I'd become, measuring my life in feet for my children. I watched Sarah drop them off, saw how my daughter didn't even look back when Sarah left, how my son was walking now, taking steps I'd never seen because I'd been too busy taking Melissa from behind to notice my baby becoming a toddler. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered because at that point, any human contact felt like a lifeline. It was Jennifer's divorce lawyer. Apparently, in the chaos of everything, Tom had tried to claim I knew about his affair and had been covering for him. He'd thrown me under the bus to get a better settlement, saying I'd encouraged the whole thing, that we'd been each other's alibis. It was, but Jennifer's lawyer wanted my deposition. Another legal fee I couldn't afford. Another day in court, being reminded of what a failure I was. I drove to the motel where I'd been rotating between 3 different rooms to avoid the manager realizing I was living there. The parking lot was full of cops. My stomach dropped. Had Sarah reported me for driving by the daycare? But no, they were there for the room next to mine. The guy staying there had killed himself. Pills and. The cops were interviewing everyone, asking if we'd heard anything. I hadn't. I'd been too busy refreshing Sarah's Instagram, torturing myself with photos of her and the kids looking happy without me. The dead guy's stuff was being hauled out in evidence bags. His wallet fell out of one, landing near my feet. I saw his driver's license. 43 years old. 2 years older than me. The cop picking it up noticed me staring. "Did you know him?" he asked. I shook my head. "Poor," the cop continued. "Ex-wife got everything in the divorce. Kids won't talk to him. Lost his job after the affair came out at his office." He looked at me, maybe seeing something in my face. Let that be a lesson, right? I was up in the parking lot after he left. Not because I was hungover, but because I'd just seen my future in an evidence bag. That afternoon, I finally met with Melissa about the pregnancy. She looked different. The gym glow was gone, replaced by stress, acne and exhaustion. She'd moved back in with her parents, who wanted to castrate me. The pregnancy was making her sick, and she couldn't afford the doctor visits without insurance. She needed money. Of course she did. Everyone needed money from me while I was sleeping in a Honda Civic and showering at truck stops. "I didn't plan this," she said, crying into a Starbucks napkin. "I thought you were separated. You said you and your wife were roommates." Another lie I'd told. Added to the pile. Sarah and I had made love the night before I first slept with Melissa. Sarah had initiated, had been trying to reconnect despite the postpartum depression. I'd participated but had been thinking about Melissa the whole time. God, I was such a... "The baby might not even be yours," Melissa continued. "But if it is? I'll pay for the test," I said, knowing I'd have to sell my car to afford it. "And if it's mine, I'll do what's right." She laughed bitterly. "Like you did right by your wife?" I had no answer for that. The paternity test took 2 weeks to come back. During those 2 weeks, things got worse. Sarah's lawyer sent over the divorce papers. She wanted everything. The house, the cars, full custody, alimony, child support. My lawyer, a public defender who seemed to hate me almost as much as I hated myself, said I'd be lucky to see my kids every other weekend. "Infidelity doesn't look good to judges," he said, like I didn't already know that. Tom called one night, and was crying. Jennifer had taken everything and moved to Colorado. She'd started a blog about surviving infidelity that had gone viral. Our family reunion disaster was her opening post. She didn't use real names, but anyone who knew us could figure it out. The comment section was brutal. Hundreds of women sharing their own stories, calling Tom and me monsters, saying we deserved worse than we got. Tom had been fired after his company found the blog. His reputation was destroyed. He was staying with our mother, who spent most of her time crying and asking where she went wrong raising us. "We ruined everything," Tom slurred. "For what? For what?" I didn't have an answer. Rachel hadn't been worth it for him any more than Melissa had been worth it for me. We'd thrown away our families for orgasms and ego boosts. We'd traumatized our kids for the thrill of someone new wanting us. We were clichés, midlife crisis stereotypes who'd destroyed everything rather than deal with our issues like adults. The paternity test came back positive. Melissa was carrying my child. Another kid I'd fail, another life I'd ruin. She wanted to keep it, saying she didn't believe in abortion. Her parents wanted to sue me for emotional damages on top of child support. My lawyer laughed when I told him. "Get in line," he said. "You'll be bankrupt long before they see a dime." Sarah finally agreed to meet me, but only in public, only with her lawyer present. We met at a Panera, the same one where we'd had our first date 15 years ago. She looked good. Better than she had in months. The stress of keeping secrets was gone, replaced by something harder. Resolution, maybe. Or just indifference. "I want to know why," she said simply. "Not about being lonely or unappreciated. The real why." I couldn't look at her. "I don't know." "That's not good enough." I wanted to feel young again. I wanted someone who didn't know all my failures, who looked at me like I was impressive instead of just another chore on their list. Sarah laughed, but it was hollow. I was dealing with postpartum depression. I was keeping our children alive, keeping our home running, supporting your career, your dreams. And you needed to feel impressive? I know how it sounds. Do you? Do you know that I knew about the affair 2 weeks in? That I was waiting for you to come clean, to choose us? Do you know I scheduled marriage counseling 3 times and canceled because you were always at the gym? Do you know our daughter asked why daddy smells different, and I had to lie to protect her from the truth that her father is a cheater? Each word was a knife. I deserved every. "The baby," I started. "I know about the baby." Melissa reached out to me. Woman to woman. She wanted to apologize, wanted to make sure I knew she didn't know you were married at first. Sarah pulled out her phone, showed me the messages between them. "She's 19, Bobby. 19. You are away from our family for a teenager." I wanted to. Right there in Panera, surrounded by suburban families and the smell of bread, I wanted to cease existing. 19. She'd told me she was 23. Not that it mattered. Not that anything mattered anymore. "Our kids will have a half-sibling they'll never know," Sarah continued. "Another child you'll disappoint. Another woman you'll abandon when things get hard. Because that's who you are. Not who you became, but who you always were. I just couldn't see it until now." She left me with the check. $12 for 2 coffees neither of us had touched. I sat there for another hour, until the manager asked me to leave because I was making other customers uncomfortable. A grown man sobbing into his phone while looking at family photos was bad for business. That night, I got the call that changed everything again. Mom had a heart. The stress of both her sons destroying their families, the shame in her community, the whispers at church, had broken her heart. She was in the ICU. Tom and I rushed to the hospital, but they wouldn't let us see her together. The nurse said she'd specifically requested we come separately, that seeing us together would be too much stress. I sat in that waiting room, watching Tom pace outside since we couldn't be in the same space, and realized we'd killed her. Maybe not literally, but we'd broken the woman who'd raised us, who'd devoted her life to making us good men. We'd failed so spectacularly that our mother's heart couldn't take it. 6 months later, I stood outside the courthouse after signing away my parental rights. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't afford to fight anymore. Sarah's lawyer had painted me as unfit, unstable, a serial cheater who'd exposed his family to potential diseases, who'd brought his pregnant mistress into their lives. The judge agreed. Supervised visits once a month, if Sarah approved. She hadn't approved once yet. Mom survived the heart attack, but never fully recovered. She lived with Tom now, in an assisted living facility that cost more than either of us could afford but somehow had to manage. She didn't recognize me most days, which was a mercy. On the days she did, she just cried. Tom and I split the bills and the guilt. We never talked about the reunion anymore. What was there to say? Melissa had the baby 3 weeks ago. A boy. She named him after her father and wouldn't even discuss giving him my last name. I'd seen him once, through the nursery window at the hospital. He looked like me. Same nose, same chin. Another reminder of my failure walking around in the world. Melissa's parents had moved her to another state. I sent checks when I could, which wasn't often. The court would come after me eventually for more, but you can't squeeze blood from a stone. I worked in construction now. Cash under the table because my wages were being garnished from any legitimate job. My back was constantly sore, my hands were destroyed, and I was the oldest guy on the crew by a decade. The younger guys talked about their girlfriends, their hopes, their plans. I stayed quiet and ate lunch alone, a ghost haunting a life that used to be mine. Sarah remarried last month. A guy from her grief support group, a widower with kids of his own. They looked happy in the Facebook photos her sister posted, the ones I wasn't supposed to be able to see but did because I'd created a fake account just for myself. My kids called him by his first name, but my daughter, the one who used to wait by the window for me to come home, was holding his hand in every photo. My son, who'd learned to walk while I was measuring distance from a restraining order, was on his shoulders. They were healing. Moving on. Without me. The fake account let me see other things too. Jennifer's blog had become a book. Surviving the Ruins, a guide to rebuilding after betrayal. It was a bestseller. She did a morning show interview where she talked about the family reunion, about how two brothers had destroyed multiple families with their selfishness. She didn't name us, but she didn't have to. Everyone in our town knew. I couldn't go to the grocery store without feeling the stares, hearing the whispers. Tom texted me most nights. Always the same themes. Why did we do it? How did we become these people? Remember when we were kids and Dad told us to be good men? Remember when our families were whole? I never responded. What was there to say? We knew why we did it. We were selfish, weak, cowards who wanted to feel special more than we wanted to protect the people we claimed to love. Rachel, the woman Tom had everything away for, was engaged now. To Jennifer's cousin, of all people. They'd met at a support group for families affected by infidelity. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. She'd moved on, found happiness, while Tom rotted in guilt and Jennifer had sent him their engagement announcement with a note, she upgraded. I lived in a studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant. The smell of General Tso's chicken was permanently embedded in everything I owned. Not that I owned much. Some clothes, a laptop for the job searches that never went anywhere, a mattress on the floor. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor's TV, their fights, their makeup. I wore earplugs most nights, trying to block out the sounds of other people living the life I'd thrown away. The worst part was the dreams. Every night, I dreamed about the life I should have had. Sarah and I are growing old together, watching our kids graduate, get married, have kids of their own. Simple dreams. Beach vacations and birthday parties and Sunday dinners. I'd wake up disoriented, reaching for Sarah, finding only emptiness and the reality that I'd chosen this. Every bit of it was my choice. Last week, I ran into an old friend at a gas station. He tried to make small talk, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. Everyone knew my story. I was a cautionary tale parents told their kids, wives told their husbands. Don't end up like Bobby, they'd say. Look what happens when you cheat. He asked if I'd heard about the reunion venue, the lake house I'd rented for that disaster. The owner had turned it into a wedding venue, marketing it as a place for new beginnings. Couples were getting married where my family had exploded. They were promising forever in the same room where Jennifer had played that voicemail, where Sarah had walked out without a word, where my mother had looked at her two sons with such disappointment that it stopped her heart. I laughed. Laughed. The friend backed away, probably thinking I'd lost it. Maybe I had. But there was something perfectly poetic about it. That house had seen the worst of human nature, and now it was hosting the best of human hope. People were starting their lives where I'd ended mine. Melissa called yesterday. Not about money or the baby, but to tell me she was getting married. A good guy, she said. Someone who wanted to raise my son as his own. She needed me to sign the adoption papers. Give up my rights completely. Let this other man be the father I couldn't be. He doesn't need to know about you, she said gently. He doesn't need to carry your mistakes. She was right. The kindest thing I could do for that boy was to disappear. Let him grow up thinking his father was the man who chose to raise him, not the one who destroyed multiple families for a few months of ego stroking. I signed the papers without reading them. What was one more loss? One more failure? Tom called after, as usual. Jennifer was remarried, too, pregnant with her new husband's baby. Happy. Thriving. Her blog about our destruction had given her a new life, a better life. Everyone seemed to be doing better without us. Our ex-wives, our kids, even our affair partners. We were the common denominator in everyone's misery, and removing us from the equation had let them heal. We're the villains, Tom said, his words slurring together. In everyone's story, we're the bad guys. He was right. We weren't tragic heroes brought down by circumstances. We were selfish men who'd chosen momentary pleasure over lasting love, who'd traumatized our children and betrayed our wives for nothing more than the thrill of someone new. We were exactly what everyone said we were, cheatin', who got what we deserved. I thought about the man in the motel, the one who'd killed himself in the room next to mine. I understood him now. Not the act itself, but the weight that led to it. The crushing realization that you've lost everyone who ever loved you, that your children would be better off without you, that your existence is a net negative in every life you touch. I wouldn't do what he did, but I understood why he had. Tonight, I'm sitting in my studio apartment, listening to my neighbors argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. Such a small problem. Such a fixable issue. I remember fighting with Sarah about the same thing, being annoyed that she'd leave dishes in the sink, frustrated when she'd forget to move the laundry from the washer to the dryer. I'd give anything to have those problems back. To have someone to argue with about dishes instead of this echoing silence. My phone has one text. From Sarah. Our daughter had asked about me. Wanted to know why Daddy doesn't come to her recitals anymore. Sarah was asking if I wanted to write her a letter, something she could read when she's older, explaining why I'm not around. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that Daddy chose 20 minutes of sweaty satisfaction over a lifetime of bedtime stories? How do you tell your daughter that she wasn't enough to keep you faithful? That her mother's love, her baby brother's first steps, her kindergarten graduation, none of it was as important as a trainer who smelled like vanilla protein powder? You don't. You can't. No explanation makes it okay, no words that justify the unjustifiable. I started this story talking about being balls deep in my trainer when my wife called. I thought I was being clever, thought I was getting away with something. But here's what I was doing. I was trading my family's future for it. I was destroying my children's stability for an ego. I was breaking the heart of the woman who'd chosen to build a life with me for the brief validation of a teenager who didn't even know my middle name. The reunion I planned to ease my guilt became the stage for my family's destruction. The brother I thought would understand became my fellow villain in everyone's story. The mother who raised us to be good men died believing she'd failed. The wife who loved me despite my flaws moved on to someone worthy of her. The children who once ran to greet me at the door now don't even ask where I am. And me? I'm 41 years old, living above a Chinese restaurant, sending checks when I can to a child I'll never know, signing away rights to another I'll never see, working construction until my body gives out, and falling asleep to the sounds of other people living the life I've away. If you're reading this thinking about cheating, thinking you're different, thinking you won't get caught, or that it won't cost you everything, look at my life. Look at the ruins. Look at the children who'll grow up wondering why Daddy didn't love them enough to stay faithful. Look at the wife who'll never trust another man the way she trusted you. Look at the family gatherings you'll never attend, the milestones you'll miss, the love you'll lose. That momentary thrill, that new person who makes you feel alive? They're not worth your daughter asking why you don't come home anymore. They're not worth your son learning to walk without you. They're not worth becoming the cautionary tale other parents tell their children. I was somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's son who made them proud. Now I'm just another cheater paying the price, and the cost is everything that ever mattered. The saddest part? My children won't even remember enough about me to properly hate me. I'll just be an absence in their lives, a void where a father should have been, and that's exactly what I deserve.